The Galactic Council had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. 17 species, each older than human civilization itself, gathered in the great crystal chamber of Station Primarch. They came here to discuss trade, territory, and the order of the universe. They had done this since before the first humans learned to make fire. These ancient beings had watched Earth from far away. They saw humans discover electricity. They saw humans build rockets. They saw humans finally reach the stars 200 years ago. But the Council decided long ago that humans were too wild, too emotional, and too dangerous to be trusted. Their policy was simple: watch the humans, but never speak to them. Never invite them. Never let them know they were being watched. Then Commander Alara Vance broke every rule they had. She arrived not in a great warship, but in a small cargo ship that had seen better days. The ship was old and beaten, held together with repairs and determination. But somehow this small human vessel had found the secret location of Station Primarch. Somehow, it had broken through security systems that had protected the Council for thousands of years. The guards did not know what to do. No one had ever come uninvited before. By the time they decided to stop her, Lara was already walking through the great doors of the Council chamber. 17 species turned to look at her. The Velthary beings of light and flowing tendrils glowed with surprise. The Vorix creatures made of living liquid metal rippled with confusion. The Dreeth, ancient philosophers who had lived for millions of years, simply watched with calm interest. The Velthary High Speaker rose from his seat. His tendrils burned bright red with anger. "How did you get here? How did you break our security?" Ilara stood alone in the center of the great chamber. She was small compared to these beings. She was young compared to their ancient years, but she did not look afraid. "Your security was designed to stop logical minds," she said. "Minds that think in straight lines. But humans do not think in straight lines. We guess. We feel. We try things that make no sense." She smiled. "I simply tried every wrong answer until I found the right one." Some of the council members made sounds that might have been laughter. The Vorix delegate spoke, his voice like metal scraping against metal. "You are bold for such a small creature, but you have broken our laws. You have invaded our sacred space. Give us one reason not to destroy you where you stand." Ilara reached into her coat and pulled out a small data chip. She held it up so everyone could see. "This is my reason," she said. 6 months ago, a plague struck the colony on Vethers Minor. 3 million people lived there. Humans, yes, but also Korath and Cylon and others. They sent messages begging for help. They sent them to everyone, including you. The chamber grew very quiet. "Lara Continges had the cure," Ilara continued. "Your warehouses held enough medicine to save everyone. But your council decided that the cost was too high. You calculated that saving 3 million lives was not worth the resources, so you did nothing." The Velthary High Speaker's tendrils flickered. "You do not understand how the galaxy works, little human. We must think of all species, all worlds. We cannot spend our resources on every small tragedy. Ilara's voice was soft, but it carried through the entire chamber. "My grandmother was on Vithris Minor. She was a teacher. When the plague came, she kept teaching. Even when she could barely breathe, she taught the children to read. She told them stories. She made them laugh. And she died believing that help was coming." Ilara stepped forward. The guards moved to stop her, but she had already placed the data chip on the speaking podium. "Help was not coming. Because you decided she was not worth saving?" The Dreeth philosopher leaned forward with interest. "And what is on this chip, young human?" "Everything," Ilara said. "The locations of 14 council supply stations, access codes to your emergency medical reserves, shipping schedules, communication frequencies, everything your bureaucracy tried to hide." She looked around the chamber at 17 species who had never been challenged like this. "I have already sent copies to every independent ship captain in the Outer Rim. By now, medicine is already moving to the colonies you abandoned." The chamber erupted. Delegates shouted in languages that hurt human ears to hear. The Velthary High Speaker's tendrils burned almost white with rage. This is theft, he roared. This is an act of war against the Galactic Council. No, Alara said calmly. This is a choice. You can arrest me. You can execute me. You can send your fleets to burn Earth to ash. But before you do, ask yourself one question. She paused. How did one human in one old ship learn more about your own systems than you know yourselves? The Vorix delegate moved closer.
Oh.
Studying her with sensors that could detect the rhythm of her heart, the electricity of her thoughts. What is your point, human? My point is that we have been watching you for 200 years, learning, waiting, and we have decided that the galaxy deserves better than optimal resource allocation. Ilara turned and walked toward the exit. I am going to help those colonies. You can try to stop me, but I should warn you, I am not the only human who has been paying attention. She reached the great doors and paused. We are very good at making things complicated for people who underestimate us. We have been doing it for our entire history. Every empire that thought we were too small to matter, every enemy that thought we were too weak to fight, every obstacle that should have destroyed us. She looked back at the council one last time. We are still here. And now we are out here, among the stars, with you. Gas! The doors closed behind her. For a long moment, no one spoke. The 17 species of the Galactic Council, rulers of known space for 12,000 years, sat in stunned silence. Finally, the Dreeth philosopher made a sound that might have been a sigh. Well, he said slowly, that was unexpected. The Axelar delegate, a being of living crystal who existed partially outside of normal time, flickered with strange light. Not entirely, she said. I have seen many possible futures. This human appeared in several of them, but I did not expect her so soon. What do we do? Asked a smaller delegate from a species that had not spoken before, no one had an answer for the first time in 12,000 years. The Galactic Council had no idea what would happen next. And somewhere out in the darkness between stars, a woman in a beaten old ship was already changing everything. 3 months passed after Alara Vance walked into the Galactic Council and turned their world upside down. The ancient rulers of the galaxy had expected war. They had expected violence. They had expected the humans to attack with ships and weapons. Instead, Alara did something far more dangerous. She helped people. The data chip she left behind spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. Independent ship captains, both human and alien, began moving council medical supplies to forgotten colonies. The Korath Collective, species of brilliant engineers who had been denied council membership for 3,000 years, started making cheap copies of expensive council medicines. The silent, beautiful water beings who had been trapped on their single ocean world for centuries quietly began settling on water-rich moons that the council had ignored everywhere. The same question spread. If one human could expose this much, what else was the council hiding? The council called an emergency meeting. The Velthari demanded that their fleets destroy Earth immediately. But the Vorix delegate pointed out a problem. Overnight, a network of powerful weapon platforms had appeared around the human homeworld. No one knew where they came from. No one knew how to destroy them. The humans had been preparing for this moment for a very long time. The Dreeth. Philosophers simply said that perhaps the council had grown too comfortable. Perhaps they had forgotten what it meant to face a new challenge. But it was the Axelar delegate who asked the question that haunted everyone. The Axelar were archivists who could see through time itself. They had been studying human history, and what they found worried them deeply. This species has a pattern, the Axelar said, her crystal body flickering with concern. When humans face an obstacle, they do not just overcome it. They become it. They were prey animals, so they became the greatest predators on their world. They were trapped on one planet, so they built ships to escape. They were ignored by us, so they learned everything about us. Ash. Her voice echoed across dimensions. We have made ourselves their obstacle. What will they become now? While the council argued, Alara built something new. She had established a base on a station in the Drift, a lawless region of space between council territories. Her crew had grown from 3 people to 300, Humans worked alongside Korath engineers and silent navigators. Species that had been enemies for centuries now shared meals and fixed ships together. They called themselves the Open Hand. Their mission was simple: find places where the Council's rigid rules caused suffering and fix them. They did not ask permission. They did not wait for approval. They simply helped. Alara was reviewing supply lists when her second-in-command interrupted her. 16 Echo was a Korath, a being whose mind was connected to millions of others in the collective. His voice buzzed with the thoughts of his people. "Commander, someone is here to see you." The visitor was Ambassador Thessaly, the youngest member of the Velthari delegation. She was the only council representative who had not demanded Alara's death. Her tendrils glowed soft blue, a sign of curiosity rather than anger. "I want to understand," Thessaly said. "Your species is so young. You have no great fleets, no ancient alliances, no powerful weapons. Yet you walked into the heart of galactic power and challenged beings who have ruled for thousands of years. Why would you do this?" Alara put down her datapad and really looked at the alien ambassador. Thessaly was young for her kind, only a few hundred years old. There was something in her eyes that reminded Alara of herself. "Do you know what humans did before we had starships?" Alara asked. "Before we even had cities or writing or metal tools." Thessaly's tendrils rippled in a gesture of negation. "We told stories," Alara said. "We sat around fires in the darkness and told each other stories. Stories about heroes who faced impossible enemies. Stories about ordinary people who refused to give up. Stories about the world being unfair and cruel, and about people who made it better anyway." She smiled. "We have been training for this for 100,000 years. Every story, every legend, every tale of someone standing up against power. We just did not know we were training. We thought we were just trying to stay warm in the dark." Thessaly was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. "There are others on the council who think as I do. We believe the old ways have failed. We believe change is possible. But we are few, and the ancient powers do not want to change. And help us give them a reason to change." Thessaly's tendrils brightened with surprise. "How?" Alara handed her a small datapad. "I need to find something. A place called the Silence. I need to know what is there, and why the Council forbids anyone from going near it." The ambassador's light flickered with shock, then dimmed to almost nothing. "Fear. Real fear. The Silence is forbidden. Even council members cannot go there. Even speaking about it is dangerous. The punishment is death." "I know," Alara said. "That is why I need to go." "But why? What could possibly be worth that risk?" Alara looked out the viewport at the stars. Somewhere out there, billions of people lived and died under rules made by beings who saw them as numbers on a chart. Resources to be allocated. Problems to be managed. "Because the Council is afraid of something," she said. "They have ruled for 12,000 years, and in all that time, they have never let anyone near the Silence. Whatever is there, it is the key to everything. The key to why they act the way they do. The key to changing them, or the key to destroying us all," Thessaly said quietly. "Maybe." Alara turned back to face the ambassador. "But I would rather know the truth and face it than live in comfortable ignorance. That is what makes us human, I think. We cannot leave a mystery alone. We have to know, even when knowing might hurt us." Thessaly stood in silence for a long time. Her tendrils shifted through colors that Alara could not read. Finally, they settled on a deep, determined purple. "I will help you," the ambassador said. "But understand this. If you are wrong, if whatever is in the Silence destroys us, I will spend my final moments regretting this choice. And if I am right," a flicker of something that might have been hope crossed Thessaly's features, "then perhaps I will spend my final years watching the galaxy become something better." Alara extended her hand. After a moment of confusion, Thessaly wrapped a tendril around it. Different species, different bodies, different histories. But in that moment, they understood each other perfectly. The galaxy was changing. Ancient powers trembled at the sound of footsteps they had never expected to hear. And at the center of it all, A human who refused to accept the rules was about to learn why those rules existed in the first place. The silence waited. It had been waiting for a very long time. The silence was not a place. It was an absence. A hole in the universe. The region stretched 40 light-years across. No signals traveled through it. No ships that entered ever came back. For 8,000 years, the Council had sent probes into the silence. Not one had ever sent a message home. The unwritten law was known to every species in the galaxy. The silence must never be disturbed. Ilara Vance disturbed it anyway. The Defiant Hope was an old Korath cruiser that had been rebuilt with human stubbornness and silent navigation skills. It was not pretty. It was not elegant. But it was tough, and it was crewed by 40 beings who believed in what they were doing. They crossed the boundary into the silence on a cold morning by ship time. Everyone held their breath as the stars outside the windows seemed to grow dim. The light itself felt tired here, as if even photons were exhausted by the weight of this place. "All systems are working," 16 Echo reported, but his voice crackled with static that had not been there before. "I am detecting something ahead. Something large." "How large?" Ilara asked. "I cannot say. My sensors tell me it is smaller than an atom and larger than a star at the same time. This should not be possible." Thessaly stood beside Ilara, her tendrils pale with fear. "The ancient records mention this," she whispered. "The builders. The ones who existed before all other species. They left something here. Something they wanted everyone to forget." "Why would they want it forgotten?" Thessaly's light flickered. "Because they were afraid of it. And the builders were afraid of nothing else in the entire universe." 3 hours later, they found it. The structure hung in empty space, a shape that hurt to look at. Its surfaces folded into directions the eye could not follow. Looking at it too long made Ilara's head ache and her stomach turn. It was ancient beyond understanding. It had been here since before the first council meeting, perhaps since before the first life in the galaxy, and it was waiting. The moment they approached, a voice filled the ship. It did not come through speakers. It simply appeared inside their minds. As clear as their own thoughts, "You are not the ones we expected." Ilara stepped forward. Her heart pounded so hard she could hear it in her ears. Her hands shook, but she kept her voice steady. "No, we are not the ones you ignored for 12,000 years. We are the ones who came looking for answers." Pause that seemed to stretch for centuries. "The Council knows the answers. They choose ignorance. Then tell me." Ilara took another step forward. "Why does the Council really exist? What are they protecting the galaxy from?" "Themselves." The structure began to open. Not physically, not in any way that made sense to human eyes. It opened like a flower, like a book, like a door, into everything that had been hidden for 8,000 years. And suddenly, Ilara understood. The builders had not disappeared. They had evolved beyond physical bodies, becoming something that existed outside of normal space and time. But before they left, they had looked into the future. What they saw terrified them. War. Endless war. Species against species. Worlds burning. Civilizations destroying each other in cycles of violence and revenge that would never end. The galaxy tearing itself apart until nothing remained but ash and silence. So the builders created the Council. They chose the 17 oldest species and gave them power. But the Council was not meant to govern well. It was meant to prevent disaster. The rigid rules, the obsessive resource management, the careful suppression of new ideas and new technologies. All of it was designed to keep the galaxy frozen in place. Safe, static, unable to grow, but also unable to die. It was a prison, a gentle prison with comfortable walls, but a prison all the same. There was another path, the voice continued. We saw it in the possibilities. A species that came late, that developed quickly, that thought in ways other species did not. Images flooded Elarae's mind. Earth, humans, a species that should have been nothing. Weak bodies, short lives, no natural weapons. But something in their minds was different. They did not accept limits. They asked questions that should not be asked. They refused to believe that problems could not be solved. You were always meant to come here, not because you are stronger or smarter, because you are stubborn enough to ask questions that everyone else fears. Ilara felt tears running down her face. She did not know when she had started crying. What happens now? Now you choose. The voice grew softer. Almost gentle, the council can continue, as it is. The galaxy will survive, diminished, stagnant, but alive. Or you can show them another way, a harder way, a way that might fail. And if it fails, the wars will come and everything burns. The structure fell silent. The defiant hope drifted in the darkness. And 40 souls tried to understand what they had just learned. It was Thessaly who spoke first. Her voice trembled. If the council learns what we found here, they will panic. They will try to stop us. They might destroy us. I know. It's the open hand. Everything we built, everything we hoped for it, could all end. I know, Ilara said again. She turned to face her crew. Humans Koroth, Cylon, a dozen other species who had risked everything to be here. I cannot make this choice for the galaxy, she said, but I can make it for myself. I am going back to the council. I am going to tell them everything. The truth about the builders. The truth about why they were created. The truth about what the galaxy could become. They will kill you, 16 Echo said. His voice carried the fear of millions of Koroth minds. Ilara smiled. It was a tired smile, but there was no doubt in it. Maybe, but they will have to look me in the eye while they do it, and I do not think they can. I think that somewhere, deep inside, they are tired of being afraid. They are tired of holding the galaxy in chains. They are waiting for someone to give them permission to change. She moved to the pilot's chair. We are going to give them that permission, or we are going to die trying. Either way, the galaxy will never be the same. The defiant hope turned toward Council's space. Behind them, the ancient structure watched in silence, as it had for 8,000 years. But something was different now. Something in the mathematics of possibility had shifted. The builders, in whatever form they existed, felt it too. Hope. Real hope. For the first time in a very long time, the next move belonged to the galaxy. The grand chamber of Station Primarch had never been so full of people. Every delegate from every council species was there. But that was not unusual. What was unusual was everyone else. Observers had come from 100 worlds that were not part of the council. They had demanded entry after Ilara Vance sent her message across every communication channel in the galaxy. She had hidden nothing. She had told everyone everything. The silence, the builders. The truth about why the council existed. Now, Galaxy waited to see what would happen. Ilara stood at the speaking podium where she had stood months before. She looked the same, a small human woman in a simple uniform. But something had changed in her eyes. She had seen things that no one in this room had seen. She carried knowledge that could save the galaxy or destroy it. The Velthari High Speaker rose from his seat. His tendrils burned with anger, but also with something else. Fear. Real fear that he could not hide. You have committed crimes beyond counting, he said. You have stolen our secrets. You have invaded the silence. You have spread lies about the founding of this council. The punishment for each of these crimes is death. A murmur ran through the chamber. The observers shifted nervously. But worse than all of this, the High Speaker continued, you have made us question ourselves. You have made us doubt the wisdom of 12,000 years. For this there can be no forgiveness. Ilara did not respond immediately. She let the silence stretch until everyone in the chamber was uncomfortable. Then she spoke. Everything I said is true. You can send your own ships to the silence. You can see the structure yourselves. You can hear the voice of the builders. I am not asking you to believe me. I am asking you to look. The Dreeth philosophers stirred with interest. They were ancient beings who valued truth above everything else. And if we look, one of them asked, if we find that you are telling the truth, what then? Then you choose, Ilara said simply. The builders gave the galaxy to you because they thought you could keep it safe. They were not wrong. You have kept us safe for 12,000 years. But safe is not the same as alive. Safe is not the same as free. She looked around the chamber at 17 species who had ruled the stars since before human civilization began. You can continue as you are. Keep the galaxy frozen. Keep us all safe in our little cages. And in 1,000 years, or 10,000, or 100,000, the galaxy will still be here. Smaller, quieter, slowly dying. But here, her voice grew stronger. Or you can choose differently. You can let the galaxy grow. Let it change. Let it make mistakes and learn from them. Yes, there will be conflict. Yes, there will be pain. But there will also be wonder, discovery, the chance to become something more than we are. The Vorix delegate rose. His liquid metal body shifted through shapes that Alara had never seen before. He was thinking deeply, processing her words through millions of years of memory. For 12,000 years, the Vorix said, we have governed through control, through fear of what might happen if we did not. And in all that time, we have never asked ourselves a simple question. He paused. Are we governing well, or are we simply governing? The chamber went silent. This was unprecedented. A council member questioning the council itself. The human stands accused of many crimes, the Vorix continued. All of them are true. All of them are punishable by death. But she has also done something that no one has done in thousands of years. She has forced us to think. The Velthari High Speaker's tendrils flickered with shock. You would let emotion overrule law? I would let progress overrule stagnation. The Vorix turned to face the full council. I call for a vote. Not on the human's fate. That is a small matter. I call for a vote on the future of the galaxy. Do we continue as we are? Or do we embrace change? Chaos erupted. Delegates shouted in languages that hurt to hear. The Korath observers began calculating probabilities. The Cylon wept their bodies, processed emotion through water. And the room's systems struggled to handle the moisture. Through it all, Alara stood silent at the podium. She had done everything she could. Now the choice belonged to others. Thessaly restored order. Her voice cut through the noise like a blade. The vote is called. By ancient law, each species has one voice. The question is simple. Do we choose fear, or do we choose hope? One by one, the species voted. The Dreeth voted for change. They had seen too many civilizations grow stagnant and die. The Korath voted for change. Their collective minds had calculated that frozen systems always eventually collapsed. The Cylon voted for change. They had been trapped too long and dreamed of swimming in oceans on 1,000 worlds, but the old powers held firm. The Velthari voted to continue. So did the Surik, the Vroth, for other ancient species who remembered the wars that had come before the council. The vote was tied. 8 for change. 8 for continuity. Everyone looked at the final delegate, the Axelar, who existed outside time and could see all possible futures with equal clarity, the crystal being pulsed with light. When she spoke, her voice resonated across dimensions that normal ears could not hear. We have seen what grows from this moment. Both paths lead to suffering. This is the nature of existence. But one path leads to suffering with meaning, to struggle that matters, to a galaxy that chooses its own fate instead of having it chosen for them. Axelar's light brightened until it was almost painful. To look at, we vote for change. The chamber fell absolutely silent. The Velthari High Speaker stood frozen for a long moment. His tendrils shifted through colors, anger, fear, confusion, and finally, slowly, something that might have been relief. As if a weight he had carried for thousands of years was finally being lifted. It is decided, he said. His voice was heavy, but not angry. The council will adapt. He looked directly at Alara. But know this, human. If your way leads to war, if your hope burns worlds, the responsibility will be yours. Every death, every tragedy, every consequence of this choice, it will rest on your shoulders forever. Elara met his ancient gaze without flinching. I know, and I accept it. She stepped down from the podium. The observers parted to let her pass. Some reached out to touch her as if she were something sacred. Others simply stared in wonder at the small human woman who had changed everything. At the door, she paused and looked back one last time. Thank you, she said, not for sparing my life. Thank you for being brave enough to hope. And the chamber erupted into 1,000 conversations about what would happen next. The galaxy had changed. The chains that had held it for 12,000 years were broken. Now came the hard part, building something new from the pieces, but for the first time in longer than anyone could remember. The future was not written. The future was a blank page, waiting for new stories to fill it, and that, more than anything else, was what the galaxy had needed all along. 1,000 years had passed since Elara Vance walked into the Galactic Council and changed the course of history. A young human named Kai stood in the central plaza of New Harmony Station, looking up at a statue. The statue showed a woman in a simple uniform, her hand reaching forward as if she was trying to touch something just beyond her grasp. The words carved into the base were simple. She asked the first question. The galaxy found the answer together. Kai was late for class. Professor Dreth7, who had actually known Elara in her final years, did not like students who were late. But Kai stopped here every morning anyway. He needed to see her face. He needed to remember why any of this mattered. 1,000 years. So much had happened since that day in the council chamber. The history files recorded everything. The first decade of chaos, when the old systems fell apart and new ones struggled to take their place, ships had lost their navigation signals. Supply chains had collapsed. For a few terrible years, it seemed like Elara's hope might have been a mistake. But then something remarkable happened. People started helping each other. The Korath Collective, who had been denied council membership for 3,000 years, became the galaxy's greatest builders. They created new communication networks and new trade routes. They asked for nothing in return, except the chance to contribute. The silence spread across 100 ocean worlds. On each one, they discovered something new about themselves. They developed new forms of art, new ways of thinking, new philosophies that enriched every species they touched. The Velthari, who had been the most resistant to change, underwent their own transformation. A movement started by young members like Thessaly eventually reformed their entire culture. They went from being the most rigid species in the council to being some of the galaxy's greatest diplomats and teachers. There had been wars, of course. Elara had known there would be. The Vroth conflict lasted 20 years and killed millions. The Tesseral Schism nearly tore the new cooperative apart. The Exillar Paradox, when a group of time-seers tried to undo the vote that had changed everything, threatened to erase the new timeline entirely. Kai's grandmother had died in the Tesseral Schism. His father still carried scars from border conflicts. The galaxy was not a perfect place. It was messy and complicated and sometimes cruel, but it was alive. "You are going to be late again," a voice said behind him. Kai turned and saw his study partner approaching. Thessaly 7 was a young Velthari, a direct descendant of the ambassador who had helped Elara find the silence. Her tendrils glowed with friendly amusement. "I know," Kai said. "I just need to look at her sometimes. All the debates we have in class, all the theories about optimal cooperation and ethical resource distribution. Sometimes it feels so abstract. I need to remember that a real person started all of this. Someone who was just as confused and scared as I am." Thessaly moved to stand beside him, looking up at the statue. "My ancestors' journals are required reading in Velthari schools now. Do you know what she wrote about Elara?" Kai shook his head. She wrote, "The human taught me that being right is not the same as being good. The council was right that change was dangerous, but Elara was good enough to believe we could survive the danger." Thessaly's tendrils shifted to a thoughtful blue. "I think about that a lot. Being right versus being good. It is so easy to be right. You calculate the risks, you weigh the costs, you make the logical choice. Being good is harder. It means taking risks because they are worth taking. It means believing in people even when they might let you down." They stood in silence for a moment. watching the morning light play across the statue's features. Around them, New Harmony Station hummed with activity. Korath engineers argued with silent architects about a new construction project. A Dreth philosopher debated a human teenager about the nature of consciousness. A Vorix trader shared a meal with a member of a species that had not even been discovered when. Ilara was alive. This was the galaxy she had fought for. Not perfect, not peaceful, but connected, growing, alive with possibility. Do you think she would be proud? Kai asked. If she could see what we have become? Thessaly considered the question. I think she would be proud of some things and disappointed by others. I think she would tell us that we still have work to do. I think she would remind us that change is not something that happens once. It is something we have to choose every single day. Kai nodded slowly. Then I guess we should get to class. We have a lot to learn. They walked together toward the academy. Two young beings from species that had once feared each other. Now, building a future that neither could have imagined alone. Behind them, the statue of Ilara Vance stood in the morning light, her hands still reaching, still hoping, still believing that the galaxy could be better. In the silence, in a structure that existed beyond normal space and time, the builders watched. They had waited for 8,000 years for this moment. For a galaxy that chose growth over stagnation, for species that chose cooperation over control, for the children of 1,000 worlds to finally take their first steps toward becoming something new. When the message was finally decoded, 300 years after Ilara's visit, it contained only a few words. We knew you could do it. Now go further than we ever dreamed, and somewhere, in a quiet corner of the galaxy, a young human closed her history book and looked up at the stars. She did not know Ilara's story yet. She did not know about the council or the builders or the vote that had changed everything, but she felt something stirring in her chest. A curiosity that would not be quiet. A question that demanded an answer. She did not know it yet, but she was about to start an adventure of her own. Because that was what humans did. They asked questions. They pushed boundaries. They refused to believe that the universe could not be better, and the galaxy, vast and strange and full of wonders, was waiting to see what she would discover. The story of Ilara Vance was over. But the story of the galaxy was just beginning, and in a universe filled with infinite possibilities, that was exactly as it should be. Some stories end with a final page. Some stories end with a door opening to something new. This one ended with both.